Stephen Miller walked into that congressional hearing room thinking he was untouchable. He had his talking points ready, his signature smirk in place, and absolutely no idea that in exactly 60 seconds, his entire career would be obliterated on national television. What happened next wasn't just a political takedown, it was an execution. And it all started with 6 simple words that made his face go completely white. How's Katie enjoying Austin these days? If you want to see the most devastating political assassination in modern history, where a congresswoman destroyed a man without even raising her voice, smash that like button and subscribe right now, because this story is about to blow your mind. The moment happened at exactly 2:47 p.m. on what should have been a routine Tuesday afternoon. C-SPAN was broadcasting live to millions of viewers as Miller leaned confidently into his microphone, ready to deliver what he thought would be a career-ending blow to Congresswoman Crockett. Instead, she looked directly into his eyes, smiled that now legendary knowing smile, and uttered those 6 fatal words. The silence that followed lasted exactly 4 seconds, but in Washington time, it was an eternity. You could literally watch Stephen Miller's entire world collapse in real time. His mouth opened slightly, his hands gripped the table with white knuckles, and someone in the press gallery whispered, "Oh my God." And Jasmine Crockett, she just sat there, calm as could be, waiting for his response, because she knew what everyone was about to find out. She knew about the photos. She knew about the secret meetings. She knew about Elon Musk and Katie Miller's months-long affair that had been hidden from everyone, except the people who mattered most. What happened next would become the most viral political moment of the year, destroy Miller's reputation forever, and turn Jasmine Crockett into a legend. But to truly appreciate this masterclass in political warfare, you need to understand who these gladiators really are and why they've been circling each other for years. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this. Stephen Miller isn't just any political advisor. He's the guy who built his entire career on being the smartest, most ruthless operator in Washington. For decades, he's been the mastermind behind some of the most brutal political takedowns in modern history. Miller doesn't just win arguments. He destroys people. Completely. Permanently. His specialty? Finding your weakness and exploiting it in front of the largest possible audience. He's the kind of man who researches your family, your finances, your personal life, looking for anything he can use to humiliate you when it matters most. And he's very, very good at it. His wife, Katie, has been his perfect political partner for 8 years. Smart, connected, and skilled at playing the Washington game. Together, they've been an unstoppable power couple until now. On the other side of this political cage match stands Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. If Miller is a chess master, Crockett is a master detective. She's the former defense attorney who never lost a case because she never walked into court without knowing every single fact that mattered. She doesn't make accusations she can't prove. She doesn't throw punches she can't land. And she never ever bluffs. For 3 years, Miller and Crockett have been circling each other like predators. It started during a heated immigration debate in Phoenix, where Crockett called Miller's policies government-sanctioned cruelty on live television. Miller didn't appreciate being embarrassed by someone he saw as beneath him. Since then, he's made it his personal mission to destroy her career, showing up at her speaking events, sending late-night emails demanding information she's already provided, even sitting in the audience during her committee hearings, just watching, waiting for his moment to strike. Miller thought that moment had finally come. The Judiciary Committee had called a special hearing on asylum processing, and Miller was scheduled to question Crockett about her voting record. He'd been preparing for weeks, studying every interview she'd ever given, looking for contradictions he could exploit. If you've ever seen a predator stalking its prey, you know exactly how Miller approached this hearing. What he didn't know was that Crockett had been preparing too, not for his questions about policy, but for the moment when she would finally reveal what she'd learned about his marriage. Because 3 weeks earlier, Crockett had received a text message that changed everything. It was from her college friend Ayanna, who now worked as a venture capitalist in Austin. The message was simple. "Girl, you're not going to believe who I just saw Elon with." The photos that followed would expose the biggest political scandal of the year, but they would also give Jasmine Crockett the one thing she needed to end Stephen Miller's career forever: the truth. This wasn't just about politics anymore. This was about hypocrisy. This was about a man who'd built his career destroying other people's lives while hiding his own secrets. And Jasmine Crockett was about to make sure the whole world knew it. If you're enjoying this breakdown of Washington's most explosive scandal, hit that like button right now. Trust me, we're just getting started. The story really begins 3 weeks before that hearing at an exclusive SpaceX donor event in Austin, Texas. The kind of party where you need to donate at least $5 million just to get through the door. Elon Musk was holding court on the rooftop of the Lauren Hotel, discussing the future of space exploration with some of the wealthiest people in America. The guest list was strictly private. No press, no cameras, no social media posts allowed. That's why nobody expected to see Katie Miller there, alone. Katie had flown in from Washington that morning, telling Stephen she was visiting her sister in Dallas. But instead of heading to Dallas, she drove straight to Austin and walked into that party wearing a stunning black dress that definitely wasn't picked out for a family visit. Ayanna Blackwell spotted her almost immediately. As a venture capitalist, Ayanna knew all the major political players, and Katie Miller definitely stood out in a crowd of tech billionaires. But what really caught Ayanna's attention was how Katie and Elon were acting around each other. This wasn't casual conversation between strangers. They were laughing at inside jokes, touching each other's arms while they talked, standing just a little too close for two people who'd supposedly just met. Ayanna pulled out her phone and took 2 quick photos from across the rooftop. In the first one, you can see Elon leaning in close to Katie's ear, whispering something that made her throw her head back laughing. In the second, Katie's hand is resting on Elon's chest while he looks down at her with an expression that definitely isn't appropriate for a married woman. The next morning, Ayanna sent those photos to Jasmine with a message. "This was supposed to be secret, but I thought you should know." Jasmine stared at those photos for a long time. She recognized Katie Miller immediately. They'd been introduced at several Washington events over the years. But seeing her in Austin, acting intimate with Elon Musk while her husband was back in D.C., was something entirely different. Most politicians would have immediately leaked those photos to the press or used them to attack Miller publicly. But Jasmine Crockett is smarter than that. She understood that information is only powerful if you use it at exactly the right moment. So instead of going public, she made some phone calls. Quiet calls to people she trusted. A reporter at The Hill who owed her a favor. A blogger who covered Washington gossip. A few staffers who worked in different offices, but always knew what was happening behind the scenes. She didn't share the photos. She just asked innocent questions. "Have you heard anything about Katie Miller lately? Anyone know why she was in Texas last week? Seen any interesting couples around town?" Within 48 hours, whispers were spreading through Washington like wildfire. People started paying attention to Katie's social media posts. They noticed she hadn't been seen at any public events with Stephen recently. Someone spotted her getting coffee alone near Capitol Hill when she was supposed to be out of town. The rumor mill was churning, but nobody had proof. Nobody except Jasmine Crockett. Meanwhile, Stephen Miller was completely oblivious. He was too busy preparing for what he thought would be his moment of triumph, the congressional hearing where he would finally destroy Jasmine Crockett's career. If you think politics is just about policy, you're missing the real game. This is psychological warfare at its finest. Hit that like button if you're starting to see how brilliantly Crockett set her trap. The best part is still coming. The committee room was packed with reporters, cameras, and political insiders who sensed something big was about to happen. The tension was electric, but Miller interpreted it as anticipation for his performance. He took his seat, shuffled his papers confidently, and looked across the table at Jasmine Crockett with the kind of smirk that said he knew exactly how this was going to end. He was right about that. He just had no idea who was going to be left standing when it was over. The hearing started exactly like Stephen Miller planned. The committee chairman called for order, announced the topic, asylum processing delays, and gave Miller permission to begin his questioning. Miller leaned into his microphone with that trademark confidence and started his attack. "Congresswoman Crockett, your voting record shows a consistent pattern of prioritizing political theater over practical solutions. Can you explain to the American people why you continue to support policies that have directly led to increased border chaos? It was a typical Miller opening, aggressive, loaded with assumptions, designed to put his opponent on the defensive immediately. In the past, this strategy had worked perfectly. Politicians would get flustered, start explaining themselves, and walk right into his traps. But Jasmine Crockett didn't take the bait. She looked directly at Miller, tilted her head slightly and said, "Stephen, I'd be happy to discuss policy with someone who's actually focused on policy instead of personal drama. But are you sure you want to have that conversation today?" Miller's eyes narrowed. That wasn't the response he'd prepared for. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Congresswoman, but I think the American people deserve answers about your failed immigration agenda." "Oh, I'm not implying anything," Crockett replied, her voice getting just a little sharper. "I'm directly asking if you're mentally present enough for a serious policy discussion, or if you're distracted by other things happening in your life right now." You could feel the room shift. The reporters in the back started paying closer attention. Committee members looked up from their phones. Even the C-SPAN cameras seemed to focus more intently. Miller forced a laugh. "I'm not sure what game you're playing, but I'm here to discuss your record on immigration enforcement, unless you're planning to deflect from your failures by making this personal." That's when Jasmine Crockett smiled. Not a big smile, just a small, knowing curve at the corner of her mouth that somehow managed to fill the entire room with tension. "Stephen," she said, her voice calm and controlled, "how's Katie enjoying Austin lately?" The silence that followed was deafening. Miller's face went from confident to confused to absolutely pale in about 3 seconds. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Someone in the press gallery whispered, "Oh, shit," loud enough for the microphones to pick up. "I'm sorry." "What?" Miller finally managed to stammer. "Austin, Texas," Crockett continued, her voice never changing tone. "Your wife has been spending a lot of time there recently. I was just wondering how she's finding it. The weather, the company, the private events. You know." Miller's hands were gripping the edge of the table so tight his knuckles were white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" Crockett raised an eyebrow. "Because I have some friends in Austin who mentioned seeing her at a SpaceX event last week. Very exclusive gathering, very intimate atmosphere. She seemed to be having a wonderful time with Elon Musk." The room erupted, not loudly, but you could feel the energy change completely. Phones started buzzing. Reporters began typing frantically. Committee members exchanged shocked glances. Miller tried to recover. "This is completely inappropriate. We're here to discuss policy, not engage in gossip and innuendo." "Oh, this isn't gossip," Crockett said, pulling out her phone. "This is documentation. Would you like me to show everyone the photos, or would you prefer to answer some questions about border security instead?" That's when Stephen Miller completely lost it. "You can't do this," he shouted, his voice cracking. "This is a congressional hearing, not some tabloid show. You can't just make accusations without evidence." "I'm not making accusations," Crockett replied calmly. "I'm asking about your wife's travel schedule. But if you'd prefer to discuss evidence..." She held up her phone, and even though nobody could see the screen clearly, everyone in the room knew exactly what she was threatening to reveal. Miller stood up so fast he knocked over his water glass. "This is harassment. This is a coordinated attack. I demand the chairman put a stop to this character assassination." But the committee chairman, who had been watching this unfold with barely concealed amazement, just shrugged. "Mr. Miller, Congresswoman Crockett asked you a simple question about your family. If you don't want to answer, you're free to return to your prepared questions about immigration policy." Miller looked around the room desperately. Every camera was focused on him. Every reporter was taking notes. Even his own staff members were staring at him with expressions of pure horror. This is... You can't..." Miller stuttered, completely unable to form a coherent sentence. "Stephen," Crockett said, her voice now filled with something that sounded almost like sympathy. "Maybe we should take a break. Give you some time to call your wife. Check in on how she's doing in Austin. Make sure she's safe." Miller's face went from pale to bright red. "How dare you? My marriage is none of your business." "You're absolutely right," Crockett nodded. Your marriage isn't my business. But when someone builds their entire career on attacking other people's personal lives, their family values, their private choices, and then their own family starts making very public choices, well, that becomes everyone's business, doesn't it? If you're enjoying this absolute masterclass in political destruction, hit that like button right now. The aftermath is even more incredible. The explosion was immediate and catastrophic. Within 30 minutes of Miller storming out of that hearing room, in Miller meltdown was trending on Twitter. Within an hour, the video clip had been viewed over 2 million times. By the end of the day, it was the most watched political moment of the year. But the real story was just beginning. At 4:15 p.m., barely 2 hours after the hearing ended, TMZ published an exclusive story with the headline, "Political Power Couple in Crisis. Stephen Miller's Wife Spotted Getting Cozy with Elon Musk in Austin." The story included the photos Ayanna had taken, plus several more from different angles that showed Katie and Elon looking very much like a couple. By 6:00 p.m., every major news network was covering the story. CNN ran a segment called Marriage, Politics, and Public Meltdowns. Fox News tried to spin it as an attack on conservative family values, but even their hosts couldn't hide their shock at Miller's complete breakdown on live television. MSNBC brought in body language experts to analyze Miller's reaction. "You can see the exact moment when he realizes his career is over," one expert explained while replaying the clip in slow motion. "The way his hands shake, the way his voice cracks. This is a man who knows he's been completely exposed." Social media was absolutely brutal. TikTok creators were making videos using Miller's "How dare you" outburst as comedy gold. Instagram memes compared his meltdown to famous political scandals throughout history. Reddit users were analyzing every frame of the hearing footage, pointing out all the moments when Miller's composure completely cracked. But the most damaging coverage came from political insiders who had worked with Miller for years. One former colleague told Politico, "Stephen's entire brand was based on being the smartest, most prepared person in any room. Watching him get completely outmaneuvered by Crockett like that, it destroys everything he's built his reputation on." Another Washington insider was even more blunt. "Miller made a career out of destroying people with their personal secrets. Now everyone knows his biggest secret, and he handled it like an amateur. He's done." The conservative movement that had supported Miller for years began distancing themselves immediately. The Heritage Foundation quietly removed his bio from their website. The American Enterprise Institute canceled his upcoming speaking engagement. Even Tucker Carlson, who had been one of Miller's biggest supporters, refused to have him on his show. Meanwhile, Katie Miller's silence was deafening. She didn't return calls from reporters. She didn't post anything on social media. She didn't issue any statements through representatives. She simply disappeared. But Elon Musk, he posted a single tweet at 11:47 p.m. that night. "Life is complicated. Truth is simple." It got 3.2 million likes and 800,000 retweets by the next morning. If you're shocked by how quickly Washington will abandon someone who's been exposed, drop a like and let me know in the comments. The political world is ruthless, and no one demonstrates that better than what happened next. The story had evolved beyond just a political scandal. It became a cultural moment about hypocrisy, power, and accountability. Women across the country were sharing clips of Crockett's performance with captions like, "This is how you handle a bully," and "Watch her destroy him," without even raising her voice. Young political staffers were analyzing her strategy, trying to understand how she had so perfectly controlled the narrative. But perhaps the most significant reaction came from other politicians who had been targeted by Miller over the years. Senator Elizabeth Warren tweeted, "Sometimes karma has perfect timing." Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez posted, "Fascinating to watch someone finally get held accountable for their own tactics." 3 days after the hearing, the Washington Post published a lengthy investigation into Miller's career, documenting all the times he had used personal attacks and family scandals to destroy his political opponents. The headline read, "The Miller Method: How a Political Hitman Finally Met His Match." The article included interviews with dozens of politicians, staffers, and journalists who had been targeted by Miller's tactics over the years. One recurring theme emerged: Miller's complete inability to handle having his own methods used against him. He could dish it out, but he absolutely could not take it. The moment someone turned his own playbook against him, he completely fell apart, one former congressman told the Post. A week later, Miller's consulting firm lost its three biggest clients. His book deal was canceled. His regular appearances on cable news shows were indefinitely suspended. The think tank where he held a senior fellowship announced they were restructuring their personnel. Political speak for, "We're firing him, but trying to be polite about it." Katie Miller, meanwhile, was spotted having dinner with Elon Musk at an exclusive restaurant in Los Angeles. When photographers tried to approach their table, Musk's security team made it clear that questions were not welcome. But the photos spoke for themselves. Katie looked happier and more relaxed than she had in any public appearance in years. 2 weeks after the hearing, divorce papers were filed in Washington, D.C. Superior Court. Katie Miller was seeking a dissolution of her 8-year marriage to Stephen Miller, citing irreconcilable differences. She was also requesting half of their considerable assets and ownership of their Georgetown townhouse. Miller's response was filed 3 days later. In addition to contesting the financial demands, his legal team made an unusual request. They asked the court to seal all proceedings and prevent either party from discussing the case publicly. It was a final admission of just how completely Jasmine Crockett had destroyed him. The man who had built his career on exposing other people's private business was now desperately trying to keep his own private business out of the headlines. But it was too late. The damage was permanent and total. What makes this story so powerful isn't just the scandal itself. It's what it reveals about power, accountability, and the changing nature of political warfare. If you're finding this analysis valuable, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the most explosive political moments of our time. What Jasmine Crockett did in that hearing room wasn't just destroy one man's career. She rewrote the rules of political engagement. For years, Washington has operated on an unspoken code. Certain people were untouchable, certain tactics were off limits, and certain secrets were protected by a collective agreement among the powerful. Crockett shattered that code in 60 seconds. She demonstrated that preparation beats intimidation, that patience defeats aggression, that truth, delivered at precisely the right moment, is more devastating than any attack could ever be. When asked later about her strategy at a Harvard Law School lecture, Crockett explained it perfectly. "I didn't destroy Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller destroyed Stephen Miller. I just made sure people could see it happening." The audience erupted in applause, but Crockett wasn't finished. "Here's what everyone should understand about power," she continued. "It's not about who can shout the loudest or hit the hardest. Real power comes from preparation, patience, and understanding that the truth always wins in the end. Stephen Miller forgot that lesson, and it cost him everything." When a graduate student asked if what she did was ethical, using someone's personal life to destroy their career, Crockett paused before answering. "What I did was hold a mirror up to someone who had built his entire career on using other people's personal lives as weapons. For years, Miller attacked politicians' families, their marriages, their children, their private struggles. He turned personal pain into political ammunition, and he did it without any regard for the human cost. So when I had information about his personal life, I had a choice. I could take the high road and ignore it, which would have allowed him to continue hurting other people. Or I could show him exactly what it feels like to have your private business become public ammunition. I chose to hold him accountable using his own methods. And yes, it destroyed his career, but it also freed dozens of other politicians from the fear he had been using to control them. Sometimes the most ethical thing you can do is show a bully exactly what it feels like to be bullied." 6 months later, Stephen Miller was working as a mid-level consultant for a small lobbying firm in Virginia, making a fraction of his previous salary and struggling to rebuild a reputation that might never recover. Katie Miller and Elon Musk made their relationship officially public with a joint appearance at a charity gala in Miami. They looked genuinely happy together, and sources close to both confirmed they were discussing long-term plans. And Jasmine Crockett? She was nominated for Time magazine's Person of the Year for redefining political discourse and demonstrating that intelligence and preparation can triumph over aggression and intimidation. She didn't win the award, but she didn't need to. She had already won something much more valuable: the respect of everyone who had ever been bullied, intimidated, or attacked by people like Stephen Miller. Because sometimes the most important victory isn't defeating your enemy, it's showing everyone else that your enemy can be defeated. If this story showed you why strategic thinking beats aggressive tactics every single time, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible political breakdowns. Let me know in the comments. What was your favorite moment from Jasmine Crockett's masterclass in political warfare? Was it the initial question that made Miller's face go white? The moment he completely lost control? Or the way she never had to raise her voice to completely destroy him? Drop your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next video, where we break down even more shocking political moments that changed everything. The lesson here isn't just about one hearing or one scandal. It's about what happens when preparation meets opportunity, when patience defeats aggression, and when someone who spent their career attacking others finally faces someone who refuses to be intimidated. In a world where political discourse seems to get uglier and more personal every day, Jasmine Crockett reminded everyone that sometimes the most devastating response to aggression is simply telling the truth at exactly the right moment. And that truth can be more powerful than any insult, more effective than any attack, and more permanent than any scandal. Stephen Miller learned that lesson the hard way. The question is, who's going to learn it next?